have to be given and just that you have to outsource either your other parastatals, you know, or either the resource which that country have, or you know, that's what I wanted to hear more when I am now physically not reading, just out of the horse's mouth, so that I can know into my mind to be on the position. Thank you.
Okay. Panelists, do you want to respond on any of those points? Any?
You want to start?
Okay, I'm supposed to start. Very well. I first of all want to support the point made on the importance not only of data but also of complaints. When we talk about access to information, we include the data, complaints, and other mechanisms. I think that's a very important point, and there are interesting mechanisms that have been developed for this and that are important to include as well. On the specific role of the World Bank, on the question on structural adjustment programs, I mean, just to explain a bit what they are, have been programs that have been led by the International Monetary Fund, not so much by the World Bank, in the 80s mainly to support certain growth policies at the cost of certain conditionalities. I think we have all learned from these policies and from these programs, and I think what the bank is now doing more and more is, yes, it's continuing with the lending, but it's probably less conditionality, it's more support of certain policies. So it's less certain sectors, but more policy-oriented lending. And second, the lending is also much more in support of technical strengthening of whether it's the education sector or the financial sector or other sectors, but it's more support of government. What we believe is, and that can be the same thing as government or civil society or the private sector, the best practices and the best fit as adjusted to these countries. Now, in the case of Namibia, I should point out, we are actually not doing a lot of lending, almost any. There has been an education loan which has been paid off. The World Bank is playing more and more the role of a knowledge bank. That is, countries come to us, governments come to us, or civil society partners, more to ask for knowledge. Okay, we would like to do, just this morning I had a question, we would like to build an asset management policy. How do we do this? Are there any good examples in the world? What are the what's the legal framework? What's the strategy? What's the policy? But how can we make it work? What have been the mistakes made by the other countries that we can learn from? So in Namibia, what we mainly do is advise governments on a demand-based basis. For example, the Ministry of Finance, the National Planning Commission, and other sector institutions on the basis of what they're looking at. For. So it's a move a bit from the focus only or mainly on the lending towards the move towards advisory service on the knowledge bank. So this is a bit, if you want, the new World Bank, but obviously the World Bank is big, there are different programs, there are different pillars, and it all depends what the government and what the country wants.
Not to belabor the point, but I believe that those people in Katutura are actually the ones that know micro and macro issues much more than me. If you go into the Groot Wengels, just here in Katutura, and ask that SME owner, what is the effect of bringing ShopRite here? He'll exactly tells you what are the effects on his gross margins and the cost. And I'm not lying, because my previous life, just 2 weeks ago, I was a development banker. So they might not know the economic terminology, but obviously they know what are the micro issues. And even when they walk into a bank, they would exactly tell you what are the prime interest rates and why they want a loan at 5% instead of 9.75%. So they know very well. They are better economists than us, in actual truth. But that's besides the point. Coming to the issues of information and the willingness of the Commission to work with the public, yes, we do have a window for market studies. We call it market studies, where the public or any other person can write into us, tell us that they believe a certain sector or a subsector is either having issues pertaining to competition, and could the Commission not investigate that. we will gladly see, based on our resources obviously, whether we can fit it in within that particular budget to do those market studies. Some of them are out of our own strategic planning. Some of them also come directly from government, but there's also a window for the public to also suggest to us in terms of where are the issues, where are the bottlenecks, and where are the sectors that we should look at. Now, coming to your specific cases, I'm really, well, it's unfortunate that it takes that time, but I would suggest that you write into the commission with your complaint, and we take it from there. That's the best answer I can give you.
I think we have time for one more round of questions and points. So there's Bill at the back. Do we have a microphone anywhere? Yeah, we do. Okay.
Okay, I was just going to comment just a little bit on the NEPOM issue. That they're very early stages, and it's part of an ongoing process of improving. You have to remember that a lot of people came into government without really the skills. They chased jobs and higher wages rather than specialization. So people end up in positions that they have really very little background in. Nurses or in foreign affairs and so forth. So slowly, I think the access to information, use of information, I'm not convinced that Facebook is a wonderful opportunity on this side, but they will be better with computers and information sources. And in general, across the public service, again, going back to Robin's point about changing the culture, I've done a number of training programs over the years with people from different ministries. I have yet to find anybody who's read their chapter in the budget. I have yet to find anybody who's read their chapter in the National Development Plan, and I've yet to find anybody who's read their chapter in Vision 2030. So we need to professionalize the public service from the ground up, and I think we might find allies in our quest for better information, because they have to make decisions and they have to implement the decisions, and so they actually do need the information. Quick example, the census asks, which language do you speak? But they lump together all the Kavanga languages into one. So if you work in the education ministry, how do you know how many teachers you need in Romanyo or Hamukushu for early primary school? How many books do you need to order in those languages? So it's very hard to do your job if you don't have the right kind of information. Secondly, we need to try to win over bottom, middle, top of the government that access to information is not their enemy, but it's their friend. It keeps them from doing wrong things, of wasting money, of being embarrassed. For example, something that I've raised before, one of the ministers got up at a meeting and said that the Gini coefficient in Namibia is 7.4. And I thought, we've just had the latest data out and it says 5.9. So how can it be 7.4? Where did he get that? And I looked, and it's a World Bank document, the World Development Report. And we can access those immediately online. That's a wonderful part of the information age, but it's very hard to get to the footnotes. So I traced the footnotes, and it goes back to the UN University in, is it Vienna or someplace like that, based on 1993 data. So we also need the international community, whether it's the rating agencies or the World Bank or others, to also pressure government to get better data and to push that data through the channels into these reports. Thank you.
Thanks. Another gentleman at the back there.
Thank you. My name's Taylor Garrett, and I'm from USAID. And I'm coming late to this session, so I don't know if this has already been discussed. But sometimes in our programs, one of the things that we look at as an advocacy tool to keep them is their economic impact, one way or the other. Like a democracy and governance project, a free elections project, human rights projects? What's the economic impact of pursuing that activity? And I would just kind of throw out there, has anyone considered looking at the economic impact to Namibia of not having access to information legislation? Like the impact on investors, the impact on service delivery, the impact on spillage, if you will, in procurement and tendering, if that is found to occur. I think those are questions that if you could come up with, the real PhD people come up with an assessment of what's the cost to the country of not having free information. And I think that would be a very useful tool for the government to say, your economic growth could be this if you did have that.
Okay, thanks. I could take a final point if there is one. Yeah, Ericsson.
But I think I'll be fine without me.
You'll have to shout.
I didn't have any comment, but after...
Microphone. You will need it.
Hello, I didn't have any comment, but after Professor Lindike talked about NIPAM, it came to my mind I had to say this to the House. It's not way back. I was called to give a training at NIPAM on finance and budgeting for local authorities in Namibia. But believe me, who were the participants? The political elected officials. Now it crossed my mind, who is responsible for finance and budgeting at the local authority level? These are the administrators. Why these local authorities, political elected officials were participants? It's initially for mere reasons that of service and transport, SNT.
S&T.
Initially they just wanted to come to the capital from the regions for SNT. But come, and then I again, maybe just to concretize it, I met another friend, he used to be a classmate with me at school, the university. He's now a finance manager for a certain municipality in Namibia. I asked him how was work, and then he said, no, it's okay. But then at times we get to think, I tend to be into conflict with the political elected official as a finance manager, responsible for the financing at the municipality level. Why? No, during elections, the councillors, the political elected officials are saying, no, do not disconnect our people with the utility, provide our people with water and everything. Just leave them without, during election campaigns. After elections campaigns, after everything, then they want everything to balance. What happened to A? What happened to B? Now the question remains, who's right and who's wrong? So after, this just crossed my mind after Professor Bill indicates that NIPAM is moving their way toward. But it is true. But in each case, we should look at it with a very narrow eye, that who will be the very participants for a very subject matter. So we have public service delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask, I think we're coming towards the end of this group now, this session now, so I think I'll ask the panelists if they have any remaining comments they would like to make. Who would like to go first?
I don't really have any remaining comments, Graham. I think I've talked more than enough, so I'll just hand it on to Michael.
Basically, I'd just like to reiterate that we need to be critical ourselves as users of the information. We need to ask for developmental impact of each and every project or program that government or the private sector or the state-owned enterprises are engaged in.
Thanks. No, I thought they were very good questions. Just wanted to respond to the two which related to the bank. One is in terms of the bank pressuring or working with government to produce better data. This is something that we're actually doing in one way or another. There are 3 activities now ongoing in Namibia, which you might not be aware of, but you're welcome to participate in one way or another. One is the support to the Statistics Agency under the new leadership. Second is the support to the Ministry of Finance, and third is the support I mentioned earlier on monitoring evaluation. So there is a bit of work going on, but it also obviously depends not only working with government, but also other partners outside government. And on the second point, on how do you quantify the economic impact of access to information and not having such a policy, there are actually certain rankings that measure it. Not directly, there's the issue of of the causality chain and attribution, so it's difficult to quantify as such. You could have certain assumptions, but it's being measured actually, and there are certain indicators developed for measuring access to information, the cost, the benefits, etc. These are the ones used by Transparency International, by the Open Budget Index, by the World Governance indicators done by the bank, and as I said earlier, there are certain indicators on the access to information being developed that measure more the impact of access to information and the progress made. But this is something that is being done and could be done for the case of Namibia if there's interest. Thanks.
Just a final comment on budgeting. The IPPR for the last 3 or 4 years has been asking the Ministry of Finance to produce what we call a citizen's budget, which is a document in plain language, more basic explanation of the budget for the person on the street. When we made that call about 3 years ago, the Ministry of Finance reacted very negatively, issued a press release accusing us of having a hidden agenda and all kinds of things. Subsequently, we just carried on calling for it. And we tried to talk to people there, and we met with some officials, and gradually over time they realized the paranoia sort of eased away, and they realized actually it's not such a bad idea after all. So last year you might have noticed for the first time when the budget was produced, the government produced a small glossy brochure explaining the main points of the budget in a sort of more attractive, accessible way. I mean, it's still got some way to go, and it could certainly benefit by being translated into local languages. But what that does seem to show is the importance of dialogue, and that you don't give up at the first hurdle. You have to keep trying to talk to the people at the top and try and get over these often initial defensiveness and fears, particularly when they sense something is coming from civil society. But if you can allay those fears, there is then some possibility of making progress. On that note, I'd like to just thank everybody for participating in this session. It's been quite a long one, but as I said, the economy is such a crucial issue. And thank the participants for coming along and playing their role, and Catherine for the presentation. I think we're slightly ahead of schedule, but we must be near to our tea break now, so if we can, I hand over to Gamani for any more announcements.
Yes. Yeah, we are slightly ahead with a few minutes. We will take our break now so that we can actually start the next session a little bit earlier, finish it earlier so that we can have time for the cocktail evening function also. Some people may want to go and powder their noses and stuff. So on that point, thanks for this session, very enlightening, and hopefully as we are working on access to information, one day it will come out what hidden agenda worked where. Tea break, please be back by 10 after.